things are you concerned about how you can engage your employees in a much more powerful way than you're currently doing? Are you possibly experiencing the loss of employees, especially younger ones, because they don't feel supported enough or engaged enough? Well, I'd like to share with you 3 tips that I have found to be extremely helpful as I have worked with different companies, as I have spoken with different employee owners and people responsible for training. Now, these 3 tips are as follows. The first one is, obviously, we have to engage people. But how do we do that exactly? You may have heard of, and maybe have witnessed it, that older employees who are quite the experts in what is going on in your company, the expertise that is really fueling your company, that they are attempting to train others, younger people, or people who are getting cross-training with PowerPoints. And this death by PowerPoint. Oftentimes, especially in technical companies, these PowerPoints are not particularly visually appealing, and there's way too much text on them. And it just seems to go on endlessly. It's almost like you're aiming a fire hose at this trainee, and they're supposed to take all of this in. It's overwhelming and not engaging, and you can lose people this way. And I'm told people often do. So what can you do? Well, I would invite you to take a look at learning management systems if you haven't already done so, because learning management systems these days are really a powerful and quite affordable method to supply this training in a more engaging way. Because especially when you think about younger employees, but really employees of just about all ages, increasingly we like to get information more like bite size. And if it can be made engaging and fun and maybe multimedia in a multimedia way, then all the better. So in a learning management system, let's say these PowerPoints that your company may have, that's great news if you do have them, because that means at least some of this information is written down. Many companies have lots of undocumented expertise, which is another topic for another day, but I deal with that all the time, is how do you get that knowledge actually documented. But let's now talk about, okay, you have that knowledge and it is documented, hopefully, and how do you train it? Well, instead of doing the PowerPoint by death, you can actually fairly easily convert these PowerPoints into narrated videos and deliver them bite-size by bite-size through a learning management system. You can set it up to where people who like to read can read, and people who like to watch videos can do that, and people who like to leaf through some PowerPoints, but not like 50, but maybe 10 in any given lesson, they can do that. And you can have assignments and quizzes, and they can be engaging and have a little bit of wit in them, make people smile, give them maybe some options that are just a little bit funny when you have, let's say, a multi-choice quiz or something like that. So you can have some fun with it, and that is then one element of your training. It doesn't displace or replace all one-on-one training or all, one on a few training situations, but it becomes the backbone of your training, and it also makes it immortal, I should say, and makes it highly leverageable because you can deliver that training over and over again. So one of the ways to reduce turnover is to avoid it. And the other thing that you can do with respect to turnover is to make it less costly. So when it does happen, that, one of the things that's obviously very expensive about that is the training. And if all the training is done just person to person, then the cost of that training is very high. So a learning management system has many advantages for that. It makes it more engaging, and it has that leverage to it, so that if you have to train somebody again because you lost somebody, then it's not as costly to do it again. So that's tip one, engaging. And along with that comes tip two, which is make it visual. And I wanted to show you a quick example. What I recommend you do is you simplify the complex into something much easier. So for example, let's say you're talking about a piece of software and it looks like this. It's very complicated. Well, somebody who's new to this, it takes them a long time to understand what the heck's going on over here. So what if you give them something simpler first? This is actually a description of the exact same piece of software, except what we've done here is we've chunked it down into 3 simple chunks, and we've even assigned some personalities to the functions. So the marketplace, you see an icon here, you see an editor, which consists of 3 different roles: a stylist, an enforcer, and a handyman, and then a resolver. And you can actually start to teach in a way that's more like storytelling. And now that does take a little bit of practice, but it's not as overwhelming and hard to do as you might think. The benefit of that is so amazing. So visuals is actually one of the ways that you can make it more engaging. So it's really part of tip one as well. Breaking it down into chunks is one, making it visual is another. And I'll give you another example here out of my own work. So here, this is essentially what I do. And I worked hard actually to show it at a glance. It's about knowledge transfer from one head to other people's heads. But what's unique here is that you can actually do it over and over again without having to have that person do it over and over again. In other words, what's actually happening is somewhere in this path of dots here is a system, and that can be a learning management system. Now imagine if I had to explain that to you without this graphic. It would be harder, wouldn't it? Now the graphic doesn't explain all of what you need to know, but it gets you there a long ways, and that is part of what a visual can really help you with. And that brings me to the third part, into action. Of course, you don't want to just put people in front of a computer screen and say, here, employee, here's your training. Have fun with that. Well, that alone will not work very well either. But it's best to combine, the old and the new ways. The old way was where you have a sort of an apprentice model, where you take a junior person under the wings of a more experienced person, and they train with that person for years. Well, we don't really have that luxury so much anymore, because what is the average time now that an employee stays at a given job? It may be 18 months, it may be less. And, in a lot of high expertise companies that are well run, it's longer, thankfully. But even they are seeing a decline in especially the length of time that younger people stay with their company. And, you can see that as a bad thing, but you can also see it as a challenge. You can see it as a challenge to make your whole training more engaging, more visual, and more interactive. And at the same time, give it a lot more leverage. So that you can do that, you can use that same material that you have made engaging, visual, and interactive, that you can make that repeatable. And as you make it repeatable, of course, you can see what's working and what's not working so well, so you can make it better. So process improvement is a big part of this as well. And then it's immortal, leverageable and immortal. So my 3 tips for you: how can you make your employees feel more supported? Train them in an engaging, visual, and interactive way. Please drop me a line and let me know how that's going for you.